recently an article came out on the Gospel Coalition, and the entire internet went wild, and a lot of stuff happened. Let's talk about it. Welcome to the To Be the Church podcast, where we explore what it looks like to truly be the church in today's culture. Andrew, Tyler, and Ben are here today. How you guys doing?
Good, man.
Good. Let's jump right in.
Yeah, let's do it.
So there was an article that came out on the Gospel Coalition's website a couple weeks ago now that I don't remember the title of it. It's gone now. But it's like "Sex Won't Save You, but it points to the one who will," or something like that.
Sure.
It was something in that realm. And it quickly turned some heads, and I don't know what. Let's talk about it. What do you want to talk about the article itself, or what do you want to talk about the response to it, or what do you?
Yeah. So the Gospel Coalition recently, and we actually got a question on this from a listener. Hey, y'all. TGC has a new Keller Center for Cultural Apologetics, and I wondered what your thoughts on it were and how you see NGC working on these things locally. Thanks, Matt. So, Matt, member at our church, faithful listener, that was a question on the Keller Center for Cultural Apologetics. Keller meaning Tim Keller, and TGC started that Keller Center for Cultural Apologetics. And if you look at, I'm trying to find the page that has all the faces of the people who are like on there. Okay, executive staff, Colin Hansen, Michael Graham. But then you've got people like Sam Alberry, James Eglinton, Michael Keller, who I actually went to seminary with. That's Tim Keller's son. Gavin Ortland, friend of the podcast. Michael Kruger, who I really like, Michael Kruger. A bunch of guys, Jeremy Treat, Trevin Wax, all the usual suspects. So this is the Keller Center for Cultural Apologetics, and seemingly they're going to be, there's all sorts of articles. If you go onto that page of TGC, books that'll be released, online learning cohorts, it looks like, that they've got going on. So the featured book right now is actually a biography about Keller written by Colin Hansen. So, Keller's getting toward the end of his life, and obviously is one of the founding guys of the Gospel Coalition. And so this is kind of a center for a think tank of sorts that in his honor. So I know a lot of the guys in there, not personally, but I know a lot of the names and have read a lot of stuff from guys in there. And generally speaking, it seems like a good little experiment in cultural apologetics.
Yeah. So that question came in back in February.
Yes.
And so there's what do you think of that in general? But then the reason that we talk about it in light of the article that came out in TGC is because the author of that article, Joshua Ryan Butler, is also the author of a book that's coming out in April called Beautiful Union. And subtitle there is How God's Vision for Sex Points Us to the Good, Unlocks the True, and Sort of Explains Everything. Mm-hmm. So that's but this article came out, and the reason we're tying these two together is because Josh was a fellow for that. I don't even know what that means.
Fellow for the culture. It's like think tanks have fellows.
Okay, so, I was thinking it's like a Lord of the Rings thing,
NGC should have fellows.
Yeah,
Tyler, fellow at NGC.
But so he's a part of that team that you just mentioned.
Yes, he was.
Yes.
Yeah. And the article was an excerpt straight from his book.
From the book.
Yep.
Yeah, I think looking at it, it was a couple excerpts put together. Like It was like, because I even found the part in the book just on the preview thing, and it's like, oh, that wasn't in there, but that's like right in the middle there. So like it's parts of the book to put together. And
so Tyler, Josh Ryan Butler used to be here at Imago Dei in town.
Yeah.
You were close to many guys over there over the years. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you ever knew Josh.
So we've been in the same place a lot of times, like at bonfires at people's houses, or like even a dinner table together at one point. If I saw Josh like in public, he would probably be like, "Hey, you."
Yeah.
He'd be like, "Hey, guy." Like he wouldn't remember who I am, but he'd like maybe, but I would be like, "Yes, I know all your work." Because I've read all of his books up till now. I've recommended his book, The Skeletons in God's Closet, on this podcast a dozen times over the last few years.
Yep.
Very, very familiar with his work. And then, he has connections even to people on our staff.
Yeah. Luke on our staff worked with him for years there at Imago Dei. And in fact, the Beautiful Union book I was having lunch with Luke months ago, and he mentioned that Josh was writing a new book and said he heard it's going to be phenomenal. And so I don't know, months ago, as soon as it went up on Amazon for pre-order, I pre-ordered the Beautiful Union book. And so, yeah, when this came out, I think even the overlap with the Keller Center for Apologetics is the fact that I think that it was definitely an article on TGC, but I think it was under the heading of the Keller Center.
Okay.
Because he was a fellow there, right? So anyway, so the article went up, and then all
crap hit the fan. Yes.
Yes, via Twitter.
Yeah. So pretty instantly, the response to the article was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like from this angle and this angle and everyone, everything from like, can you believe this guy wrote that, to this is why abuse happens in the church.
Yeah.
People saying that like this view of sex like makes it hierarchical and makes the man the only important person in the sexual relationship and X, Y, and Z. Other people just thought it was gross. I mean, he even says it in the article. He's like, now Scripture is like way more blunt about this stuff than we usually tend to be as we talk about it in the church. And so I'll just be that blunt for a minute. And then he is. And so, there was a lot of uproar. I mean, even the day it came out, it was a Thursday. I remember, when we heard about it, because we were walking to staff meeting, and I even heard rumblings in the hallway behind me. Whoa, did you see that article? Like from people just on our team even that had seen it and been like, whoa, holy crap.
Were they angrily tweeting about it? Or
no, we have policies against that. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a proverbial water cooler conversation that day.
Sure.
But
TGC pivoted quickly. I don't know how long it took them, but they quickly took the article down. They wrote an apology letter, put that article up at the link that the article was at. And then I don't know when Butler resigned from the Keller Center. I don't know when all that happened. But
I have the picture in my mind that said on March 1st he resigned.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 9 days ago as we're recording this, a couple weeks after.
So probably, not long after all that. So anyway, I've gotten a lot of questions about like, what do you guys think of that? Or I have a buddy who writes for TGC that was like, hey, what's your opinion on that? And so thought it'd be a good podcast topic. Tyler, since you're the resident Joshua Ryan Butler expert, a fellow at the Joshua Ryan Butler Center for Cultural Articles that people get mad about. I will confess, I haven't read Skelton's God's Closet yet. I haven't read any books by Butler yet. Beautiful Union was going to be my first one, and it still will be. I'm going to read that book. And my excuse is that I've been really busy the last several years. But I generally view him as like sound theologically and pretty moderate, honestly. I would view him as kind of a more moderate voice. I wouldn't view him as like super one way or the other on stuff. He doesn't, I mean, again, you've read all his stuff, Tyler, but my general opinion of him has just been like, I think he's pretty sound theologically. There might be some nuances on certain things that I don't agree with him on, but at the same time, I think he's kind of adjacent to a camp that I'm kind of adjacent to, and seems like a pretty sound dude and whatever else. And so I was optimistic about the book. Now I'm really optimistic about the book. I saw the whole thing going down on Twitter, and I first saw it because I follow a lot of people from a lot of different kind of sides of the aisle, as it were, theologically and everything. And I saw a certain brand of people that are particularly more in sort of the feminist camp or the hyper-egalitarian camp that were super ticked off about it. And they were kind of leading the charge of like, this is abusive, or this is the way this is. But it's a camp that is sometimes can look at even basic complementary teaching, which I would hold as scriptural, and call that abusive. So that's where I kind of was like, okay, interesting. I confess, I didn't read the article, haven't read it yet. I'll read that excerpt in the book when I get the book and read it. And I haven't read any of the responses. I just have kind of seen all this occurring. I read part of Kim, Julius Kim, I think his name is, who's the head of TGC. I read part of the apology letter, but just a paragraph or two, and I was just like, dude, I don't know. Like you guys don't know what's in the thing before you post it. Like, can we not have dialogue? My initial thing is like, I think TGC caved and should have like been able to go, hey, people have views that aren't your views, and sometimes that's okay. And so you can learn to like absorb it. And when you read a view you're not being harmed. So get over yourself and let's have a dialogue. That's my general opinion on it. But, you know, some would call me hyper conservative. So I don't know.
Have you read the article?
No,
Okay.
I didn't know about any of this till you guys were talking about it.
Yeah. So I'll just tell you my like initial response and reaction, because I heard about the article before I read it. It wasn't like, oh, a Josh Ryan Butler article, let me read that. It was Twitter freaking out about something.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, interesting. And I was walking into a meeting, that same meeting I mentioned a minute ago. So I like, read the article. I was like, okay, bye. And didn't think much more about it. But my thought is that like it was very discombobulating to have like that be the narrative about this guy and this work. And here's why. His work, in my opinion, and again, I haven't read Beautiful Union yet because it's not out yet. His work on God's pursuit of us, his work on things like holy war and like the way the Bible treats certain, you know, problematic elements to our culture has always been two things, like really firm and really gracious. Mm-hmm. So it's like, even if you don't agree with like where he lands as far as like, this is why the Bible like puts forth holy war as like a necessary thing in that specific time period. Even if you don't agree with that, like the way he presents it is so winsome.
Yes. That's what I was going to say.
That
The dude reminds me of being very winsome.
Yeah. That like you can like disagree with the thought, but you can never disagree with like the posture,
the tone.
Yeah.
Sure.
So there's that element. Now, I don't want to like shine light on something that would lead people down a rabbit hole. But there is a podcast that highlights misogyny in the church.
Okay.
And I listened.
There's many of those.
Well, there's one like that's like telling a specific story. And so I listened to it because I know the people involved in the story, and I was like, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And they like throw people under the bus left and right.
Yep.
And they make pains to talk about how much Josh didn't throw them under the bus. It is like people who've worked with Josh, and they're like, but there's this one guy who since moved to Arizona who like championed like the Imago Dei in all of us.
Yeah.
Right. You know,
Yeah.
in like a very healthy way. So just to see him like villainized in that way was like, that's out of left field for me. Cause it's not his character at all from what I know of him. And then the other thing that was discombobulating is a lot of the voices that I do trust in the area of sexual ethics have been ringing and singing the praises of this book since the minute it was announced.
Exactly.
And so I was like, dude, I can't wait. Like one guy specifically who I like a lot, he made the statement, this is the best book on the subject of sexual ethics I have ever read from a Christian perspective that like is applicable to where we're at today. Mm-hmm. The best book. And so like I, you know, again, very pumped about the book.
Yep.
And then so to see the whole response just be like, what garbage? It's like, whoa, that's surprising. But and it's also one thing I realized is that is coming from the theologically liberal side, but it's also coming from the more conservative side. But I think for a different reason. I think the theological liberal side sees it as like abusive or
misogynistic
or just you know wrong. But then the more conservative side will read it and see it as too salacious or like
the hyper. So yeah, I didn't see anything from hyper conservative types that were negative on the article, but I guess
there was quite a bit
closely.
It was kind of from all angles for a couple days. Yeah. That like they kind of came at it more from like a bastardization of the gospel, because the article talks about sex as he calls it an icon of Jesus in the church.
Yep.
And the man's role in sex and the women's role in sex and like Jesus in the church. And there's a couple times in the article where I was just like, okay, he went there. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And there's a couple things in there specifically where I was just like, I don't know if I would have taken it there. Yeah. But wow. Okay. Never thought about it that way. Yeah. Don't really want to be thinking about it that way.
Yeah. Sure.
And so there's a couple spots in the article where that, but there's like multiple moments in the article where like the person who grew up like super conservative Baptist would blush, you know, or, and I point to you, Ben.
Why are you pointing at me?
Why are you blushing, Ben?
But like, so I think there's an element of that too, where it's just like, oh, wow. Now yeah, so those are initial thoughts. I do think one thing that's really important is this is just an excerpt from a book. And I've heard some people argue that have read the book. They say, in the context of like where he's coming from, what he's doing in the book, this is not what it can appear to be in a 2,000 word article.
Yeah.
Right. As well, I've heard people say like, hey, this is like TGC's fault for picking an excerpt that like did that and just like throwing it out there. And then 5 days later being like, never mind, so.
Yeah, I definitely, yeah. So that's great, Tyler. Great perspective. And I don't have nearly as informed a perspective either on Butler's work or on him personally or any of those kinds of things as you do. I kind of do through you, I think. And I think that, and just watching, it's like, and I've often said as it relates to politics, but I would relate this to things like this as well. Like, know the players and know the game. And like, as I look on my Twitter feed, I don't just follow people I agree with. In fact, I follow a lot of people that I don't agree with on a lot of stuff, but specifically to kind of see how these things play out. And I could tell immediately in the people that I was following and in what they said and in how they said it. It's like part of this maybe I need to fight against, because you don't just want to stereotype something and pigeonhole something or go, okay, this is this way, or these people are doing this. But I immediately kind of went, oh, this is another one of these type of deals. And so, and I think it's like, and especially the fact that it was aimed at Butler, and then he resigns from the Center for Apologetics, which I think is a big loss for them. I think he's doing significant work and right now, just as a pastor and in his writing and everything else. And I just think that that's a loss. And I guess I got super irritated about it though, because I felt like TGC, like, did you not read it? And if you did read it and you put it up, why cave, because people are like, can't handle what it really is it's like, it's not people who take his work specifically on that stuff and then say this writing on the page then leads to, this is why abuse happens, or this is why misogyny exists within the church. They're criticizing a view that they don't agree with. And I feel like, can we not criticize views that we don't agree with without making them like, this is why, like, every bad thing in the world has ever happened? And I just, it's like the inability to read an article and go, man, I really don't agree with that. Here's my response. I know there was somebody working on a response to his article that TGC had actually commissioned, like a gal who was kind of more on a different side of it, and she was working on the response. I actually saw her tweet to TGC like, hey, I write articles for you for free, and like I had spent a lot of time responding to his article, and then you took it down, and it's like, now I'm not even going to, like, why?
Yeah, they told her like, we're not going to use the response either.
Yeah, and it's just like, why not let the one side say this and the other side did it? Like, I don't know. It's just, it's annoying to me. It's frustrating. And I think TGC needs to figure it out, because it's another data point on my, what are you doing, TGC radar? There's a lot of good stuff in their archives, but like, I just feel like they're kind of caving on a lot of stuff right now. That's a little bit interesting.
Yeah. One thing that, it kind of is just it shows us kind of like how the sausage is made a little bit in the publishing world. But a lot of the folks who were endorsing the book have now like pulled their endorsement.
I saw that.
There's a guy who, again, I've appreciated some of the stuff he's done. Rich Viadas is how you say it. I don't know. I think it's how you say it. But like he was just like, he wrote a thing and was like, hey, I'm going to be honest. I endorsed this book. I didn't read it.
He said he read 25 to 30% of it.
I read 25% of it, and he's like, and then
it was really good. And then
somebody else did a redaction, and they were like, hey, I endorse this book based on hearing Josh talk about the concepts, but I didn't actually read the book. And like, yeah, so it is a little bit of like how that publishing industry works. But dude, I don't know. I think it's a bummer. Like and again, like I don't have the personal experiences that some people may have that are like that could have been. I don't know. I don't come from a background where I've been abused sexually, and so to read some of those things might be more difficult for people than it would have been for me. But yeah, it saddened me a lot to see a person whose work has been so pivotal for a lot of people and hopefully this new book will be as well, be vilified and in a lot of ways just like canceled. Like,
Yeah,
you
for
know,
sure. Yeah, it was a total cancellation in that
yeah.
regard. But I just think, and it's not, Tyler, like you said, don't have that background, and it's not like people have been traumatized. People have been dealt with abuse and those kind of things. When you're talking about the public square and like what Josh is, writing there and what's actually the content there, it's like, I don't know. I just go, the idea of like this view that someone has that, has historical precedent to it, is being supported from scripture in this way, like is how trauma is going to, I'm just like, give me a break, dude. Like it's irritating to me. And I think it's like that we can't, have dialogue and do those kinds of things and the cancellation culture and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I just, again, mine's more of a concept, or my opinion on this is more sort of meta concept rather than like the nitty gritty of all the articles. Cause like I said, I just kind of watched from afar of it all, but knowing who this guy specifically is, I'm just like, really? Okay. I don't know. I feel like this is going to help book sales. Would it not? I mean,
well,
if we just,
I did just pull it up on Google, and it doesn't come out for another month and 2 days, and it's already the #1 new release in ethics, in Christian theology. So
I feel like it would do nothing but help.
I did have the thought, like, I wonder if this was all intentional. I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure that he's going through hell the last week.
I'm sure,
like
and
2 weeks.
especially resigning from the center. I was like,
but
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think what I brought to this conversation was really helpful. So
that's how I felt last week about our rapture conversation. I was like, explain these things to me, boys.
You don't like
might as
cancel
well
culture,
been
though,
raptured
man.
in this conversation.
You don't like cancel culture, though, right?
No,
You're not a
I'll
fan.
cancel your face.
I'm canceling you right as we speak. Right, my eyes are canceling your face. Yeah, canceling you.
All right. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you on this or anything else. You can do that in the YouTube comments or at podcast@tobethechurch.com. Have a great week.